Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrible One Home Care. Very glad you are joining us and staying with us. We appreciate that very, very much. You know, we love to get updates from the people who are helping to support our communities, those people who are representing us, and we're very glad to have back with us Beryl Amadi. Beryl, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Again, District 51 state representative. And so one of those things that people are always kind of asking about what's going on. They want to know what kinds of things they can get involved in, what kinds of things they know about. But this early childhood education curriculum is something that's been discussed for a really long time. Let's talk a little bit about where things are with that and maybe what people have options for.
Sure. Well, just a few months ago, the Bessie Board was presented with the latest draft of the early childhood education curriculum standards. And at that meeting, Bessie voted to approve the draft. But at that meeting, I had also gone to speak to ask them to not approve the draft because I reviewed the standards and I felt that they were actually a step in the wrong direction.
Okay.
I felt that they were not an improvement over what's currently in use, and I felt that there were a lot of other ways that they could have drafted these standards to where it would include what I believe our citizens think would be most important. Now, we're talking about early childhood education.
Okay.
That's the modern phrase for what we used to call daycare.
Right.
So we are talking about toddlers, preschoolers,
Okay.
very young children. And so at this hearing, the board did approve that draft, but that sends it to a public comment period. So right now, there is a public comment period open until November 10th, and you can find the instructions on the Bessie website for how to submit your comments. And I would suggest that people who have a concern about early childhood education take a look at the draft and weigh in. Whether
Right.
you love them or hate them, whether you have
Right.
suggestions for improvement,
Sure.
there's an open public comment period until November 10th. And so this is how people can get involved so that we don't hear complaints later, 1 or 2
Right.
years from
Yeah.
now.
Why did you do
And
this?
people
Why didn't
say,
you do
yes,
that?
how did this happen? We didn't know.
Okay. What did you feel like it was missing? What did you feel like that this particular curriculum needed additionally?
I felt like they took out some of the things that they would currently be teaching, and they just sort of disappeared. And,
Oh, so it was not things that they didn't have, it's things that they should have kept.
right. And
in
I
your
did
opinion.
have some ideas for things they could add because I've raised children. I've dealt with toddlers. I've worked in the nursery at our church. Years ago, I ran the nursery at our church. So I'm familiar with little children and what they can learn and what they should learn. And I felt that it lacked in a lot of ways. One of the reasons that there were others besides myself who did speak at the meeting or who submitted comments before the meeting that said, hold off on this, we think they need some improvement, is because there's something called social emotional learning that's all the rage right now. And there was a lot of social emotional learning standards that were put in there. And I think that some people would be concerned about maybe a heavy focus. We're all concerned about mental health, and we certainly want children, even toddlers who seem to have been traumatized by something in life, to receive the emotional and mental help that they would need. But when we take our entire curriculum and turn it to the focus of social emotional learning and not to what children actually need to be learning as far as academics.
Right.
And I know that
Structure.
might be yes,
right.
and academics might seem to be a funny word to some people when we're talking about 2 and 3-year-olds, but academics, numbers and colors and shapes and all about
ABCs.
yes, and how about science? What about puppies and kitties and going outside and planting seeds and all these activities? So I would just suggest that people review the standards as they're written and weigh in. If you see things that could be improved, write and let Bessie know. And the submissions from the public are going to be part of the record and they'll be considered.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. I've never raised a child, but I get questioned all the time as a mental health professional and a social worker. What is my opinion about what people should do? I'm going to go and read it.
Good.
And go see what my perspective is about that. Because I think I agree with you. There's certain basics that I think toddlers need before they get to school they need to be balanced, good social and well balanced with their emotions, certainly, but they also need to be doing things. They'd
Yes.
be learning things. And the best way for kids to do that is to do that with their hands. And so that's something I think would be really, really important. So again, they can go to the Bessie website and find out and take the steps to go and make comment and just go and review the document. And it's the Early Childhood Education Curriculum Standards.
That's correct. And if someone has trouble finding it on the website, they can give my office a call, and we'll help direct them to how to properly find the standards to review.
Okay, let's give that number out if that's okay.
Oh, it's 858-2967.
So 985-858-2967. Very good. I appreciate that. And so I know there's a number of other things we kind of want to talk a little bit about. The NAEP scores.
Yes, yes. The National Assessment of Education Progress is the national test that's given, and every year they come up with the latest data. And Louisiana, while we also saw declines, probably due to the big COVID shutdowns, our declines were not nearly what other states saw. So Louisiana fared well compared to other states, and that's to be celebrated.
Yeah,
I mean, we still
that's
have a long
exciting.
ways to go.
Sure. Absolutely. Talking about the NAEP scores, and Louisiana didn't do as poorly or as badly as maybe some others, but tell us a little bit more about some of those stats.
Sure. Well, the NAEP test scores are delivered every year, and the states are ranked according to how well or how poorly they did. And everybody was braced for a really ugly situation because of the COVID shutdown. We knew that students may have fallen behind and would not have made a lot of progress. But the good news is that for Louisiana, we didn't do so badly.
Right.
And so I have one article here that gives some of the statistics.
Okay.
And Louisiana actually led the nation in fourth grade reading gains.
Wow.
Now, I've been here before, and I've told you about things like how in Louisiana, our third graders over the past several years, only 30 or 33% of our third graders were reading at grade level.
Right.
And so for us to now see that Louisiana led the nation in fourth grade reading gains is
It's remarkable.
great.
Yes,
and,
it is.
in spite of COVID shutdowns.
Right.
So that means, I believe, that means that our state refocusing on early literacy and using phonics-based materials to do that, I believe this is the first good report that we're going to see of many.
Oh, wow.
I'm expecting
That's
a lot
awesome.
of good reports.
And it echoes how important that early development is. It leads right into the scores saying that if we do some of those things well, then we can move on with that.
Yep.
Awesome. And so now, speaking of things that we need to look at and talk about, well, sessions are always one of those things that people look forward to. Let's talk about some of those bill proposals. And I know this is a different kind of session. People need to understand the difference between a fiscal-only session versus general, right?
Yes. In odd-numbered years, the legislature goes into a fiscal-only session.
Right.
So it's a shorter session, and the main focus would be on budget-related bills.
Right.
A fiscal-only session is supposed to be the only session that we are allowed to increase taxes or fees, and I think maybe even decrease taxes.
Yeah, there's an option, right?
Yes,
right. What a
we
remarkable
can't-
idea.
Right. So we're not supposed to adjust,
Right.
adjust
Right.
taxes and fees in a non-fiscal
Fiscal year,
session.
right.
And so our focus will be on budget and finance, and we are still allowed to bring other bills, but we're limited to 5 bills each.
5 bills per representative.
Per our senator.
Or senator,
And
right.
so not every one of us brings 5 bills, but to know that there's a cap or a limit means that we have to do our work early.
Okay.
And so we've been dealing with a whole lot of current issues and some leftover old ones that are not resolved yet. But I have to say that my phone calls, my emails that I've been getting over the last few weeks have brought up some topics that could result in new legislation for next year.
Okay.
And one of them has to do with a certain assessment.
Okay.
There's something called Louisiana Caring Communities Youth Survey. And so I've begun to hear from parents, actually from around the state, that their students in public schools have been given a student survey that asks some interesting questions. And some of the parents object to their children being asked these questions. For example,
Gender issues?
it can be. There are some questions involving the topic of sexual activity. And like one parent I heard from who has a sixth grader said, I strongly object to my child even being asked those questions. The questions go into topics we have not discussed yet at home with our own child. So these parents were supposed to have been given an option to opt out of having their students receive this survey. And in some cases, for example, one story I got yesterday, there was a parent whose child was able to view the survey on the tablet that the school provides. And when she contacted the school and said, look, I objected to this, I opted out. Why is this on my son's tablet? They said, well, it's there. He's just not required to fill it out. And so we have some communication
Wow,
breakdown here.
sure.
Now,
And what does
these-
opt-out really mean? Opt-out means you got to choose that at the time?
Yes,
That's
it
just
probably
terrible.
came in a stack. You know the stack of papers they send you home the
Right,
first day of school?
right,
So
right.
let's say you have 3 children in 3 different grades, and that stack of paper can get huge, and you might
Right.
miss one little form
Sure.
that says opt out or opt in. So now, I am saying that I've been receiving phone calls and emails from people around the state. So what I am saying also is I have not heard specifically from people in House District 51. So because of the calls, I will be checking with my 4 school superintendents and asking, what's the situation here?
Right.
Are
What's
you
happening in
also
our backyard? despite
correct
what
in
you're hearing
Terrebonne,
from the
Lafourche,
state.
Assumption, and St. Mary? Are
Right.
you using these surveys? And what is your opt-out procedure? And have parents been alerted? And are you having any trouble?
Right.
So that's one.
And just be able to communicate that.
Yes, yes. And another one is, just recently, there was a story that came out in the Atlantic saying, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. And I've been getting messages and phone calls about that. It seems that someone has proposed that we simply walk away and forgive all of the officials who put us under certain mandates that now, now that
We're
studies are
dealing
coming
with,
out,
right.
were unnecessary and unfounded and unconstitutional.
Wow.
And
People don't just get a pass. I'm sorry.
that's why they're contacting me. They're
Yeah.
saying, you've got to be kidding.
Right.
This is too big for someone to just say,
Right.
oops, my bad.
Right.
We are going to have to hold some people accountable. Now, I
Absolutely.
don't know how much of that will be done at the state legislature level,
Right.
but this is an ongoing conversation.
The one thing that can be done at a personal level is to get out and vote. So we want to let
Yes.
people know, please go vote.
Yes.
No matter what your thoughts or feelings are about anyone or any topic, go vote.
That's
Let your
right.
voice be heard.
That's right. It's important. Even people who think that maybe their vote is not going to count, that maybe there's too much fraud, it's
vote.
important to vote. Because
Absolutely.
if you don't vote,
Voice isn't heard.
That's
Well,
right.
always appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, go out there, go and vote. And that will do it for this particular edition of Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming here on HTV.